The gathering started in 2006, and we started in an old United Methodist Church in the city of St. Louis, which meant that we were pretty landlocked. And when we started to grow, we very quickly started a second service and a third service. And pretty quickly we realized, if we want to keep growing, we're either going to have more space here, which is going to be nearly impossible or very expensive, or figure out creative ways to expand. And right about that time, it was 3 years into the gathering, we were starting to hear about multi-site as an option. Not a lot of Methodist churches were doing it yet, and we thought this could especially be a good form of ministry for an urban setting like ours, where expansion is not necessarily always possible or affordable, and where being in different neighborhoods kind of was attractive to us. So we started looking at other Methodist churches that were maybe looking to do a new and creative thing, and kind of put the word out that, hey, the gathering is looking at starting a second site, and if there's a Methodist church that would be interested in this, we'd love to come speak with you about it. And if not, we were going to look at other options. But it just turned out that there was a church that had just gone through their own discernment and had decided they wanted to do something radical in order to reach new people in a neighborhood. And so it just ended up working out where we were growing. This movement was starting to happen around the country, and we felt like in an urban place, we loved the idea that as we grow large, we could also grow kind of out horizontally into the city and not just in one place. And still retain a sense of intimacy and maybe authenticity at our worship experiences, which we thought we might lose as we get larger. So it was really a size thing though, a growth thing, a running out of space that led us to explore multi-site. It allows you to exist in multiple neighborhoods and to shape a ministry to fit that neighborhood. In a city, you can drive 5 miles and you're in a very different neighborhood with very different needs, very different ideas of what church ought to be. And so this allowed us to have one church, but to exist in both those neighborhoods and to shape ministry to be more contextual. I think that's an advantage. Secondly, we are in a stage where there are a lot of people who are skeptical of a church that gets really big in one place. And this allowed us to have medium-sized worship gatherings that for a lot of people felt more relational, felt more authentic, and yet we were able to provide the ministries of a large church. It's kind of the best of both those worlds. Financially, it can oftentimes be much, much cheaper to start a second location to reach new people than to buy 40 acres and put up a massive new building, which sometimes can cost millions or tens of millions of dollars. This sometimes can be done for $100,000, $200,000, maybe $500,000 to have a new site that can reach just as many people. And then lastly, as a city or an area, suburb or something changes, all your eggs aren't in one basket, so to speak. When you're multi-site, you can respond. I think it makes you more agile. You can respond more quickly to saying, hey, you know what? This site's just not growing anymore, this neighborhood's changing, but hey, there's an awesome opportunity over here. We don't have to close the whole church and move. We can start a site over there and still take advantage of a new insight or a new growth trend. It makes your staff structure much more complex. Instead of doing something once, you have to do it twice or 3 times or 4 times. Instead of one good worship leader, you have to have 3 or 4 good worship leaders. When you change that sermon slide last minute, now you have to let 4 different people know, 4 different places at 8 different services to change it. Secondly, you pretty quickly run into issues about what's non-negotiable, what has to be the same at every place and what doesn't. And it gets into it can suck a lot of your time and energy into what I call kind of internal structural questions, like, does every kids ministry program have to look the same? Or do we allow freedom at the different places? And what happens when this kids ministry person doesn't want to follow what all the other kids ministry people are doing? And it can take a lot of the energy of a staff that used to be really outwardly focused and kind of pull it back in to solve important but kind of internal structural issues. Lastly, I do think sometimes it can serve as a distraction from, we have challenges at our main site, or our first site, I should say. We need to overcome those, but those seem hard. and I don't want to deal with those. Let's go start something new over here. And it's rarely a good way to grow when you're not growing at your original site. Kind of the old adage, if you want to grow your Sunday school program, what do? You don't ask people to come to existing Sunday school classes where patterns are often pretty entrenched. You start new classes, and new classes attract new people. Oftentimes we've experienced that with worship services. The best way to reach new people is start new ministries or a new worship service. So site ministry really can be an extension of that idea that if we want to reach new people, we really need to create new space, not expect them to adapt to spaces and services that we already have. When you start new sites too, it kind of takes the energy of your church and focuses it on reaching new people. And I say that it sort of exercises muscles in a church that we haven't had to use in a long time. So it causes you to think, like, where's the best location? How are people going to get here? How are they going to know about it? How are we going to invite them? How are we going to engage the community right around this new place? And it causes you to have to ask questions that some churches haven't asked in decades, or in some cases a century or more. So if it helps us to flex a muscle that actually all of us need to be flexing.